Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday, not Monday, because Monday was July 4th. Russ and I are here. We may be joined by other people. We're not sure yet, but we're getting ready to wend our way back. I went up to Montreal for the NHL draft. It's going to be a long drive. Oh, and then speaking of the devil, here's Kevin Allen, or at least
You're calling him the devil. He called you the devil, just so you know. That's your name.
I just heard that. Yeah, I saw yesterday
we are live, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't say what I saw yesterday then.
Hello. And we mobile ack. Yes, here we go. All right. So Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
Yeah, keep it hockey today.
Okay, you're already live. Sorry, I was going to tell you something.
We're live. We're going to keep it hockey today. I saw that the NHL decided to tweet out a redraft of the 2002 draft. That was the second draft I ever attended. I was at that draft.
So was I. It was in Toronto.
Yeah, and it was so disingenuous. This whole redrafting thing is just, it's the worst. And I'll tell you why it's the worst. As an example now, you would put Cam Ward in the top 10, and he was picked 26th. To be fair, since that was very early in my draft days, I didn't know who Cam Ward was when I walked into that draft. I wasn't as well prepared as I am the last 15 years and now. And so to just automatically say, oh, yeah, let's put Cam Ward in the top 10, and Val Filppula, let's put him in the top 10. And it's like, just stop it.
Well, yeah. I
mean, it's just an exercise in fun. I mean, I get your point, but it's like people debating who the best players are. Like,
I don't want to debate it. You want to debate players, debate them all day. I just feel like, if nothing else, if you're going to do that article, at least say what the situation was like then, and then say how it turned out. Instead of,
I get it, Russ. I think from your perspective, I get it. Like, especially like just from a person who like covers this, like who does this, it would be that being your specialty. I can see they're frustrating, but I do think it's one of those things like
it's retrospective.
I feel the same way about like the trade when people go back and evaluate trades and stuff like that too, which is great. But it's like, I think from the rest of the world's perspective, it is just a fun thing to do, and I think people do enjoy it. It's and it's not really. It's got to be. It should be phrased in a way like this is not what they necessarily should have done. This is just how it's turned out. This is just how
if they did it like that, it'd be better.
Well, I mean, just to use an example in another sport, I think it was in '86, the Red Sox traded for a reliever named Larry Anderson, and they traded a third baseman prospect who was not really going anywhere in their organization named Jeff Bagwell. Well, Jeff Bagwell is a Hall of Famer, so would you have given up Jeff Bagwell in 1986 for Larry Anderson? Hell no, but that's what ended up happening.
You know what's funny about this one in 02? And someone even said it on Twitter. They had Rick Nash number 2, and someone said, I'd still take him number 1. And that's the funny thing is you probably still would take Rick Nash number 1, even though his stats may not be as grandiose as everybody's. But you know what? For all the other things Rick Nash did, you probably still would take him number 1.
Who else would be number 1 in that draft instead?
Well, yeah, it's still subjective. I mean,
hold on, I'll tell you.
Well, I was just going to say, X right. I mean, all it really is a look what happened, because you don't remember, we could have taken him. I think Mike's example is a good one because here in Detroit, we've got they traded away Schmaltz, John Schmaltz to get Doyle Alexander. And we always talk about that, even though, people who are old like me know you'd make that trade all day again because Alexander helped them. But that doesn't mean it's not fun to go back and look and this.
Duncan Keith number 1. Sorry, Kev. They had Duncan Keith number 1. He was originally drafted 54th, and Rick Nash number 2.
That's debatable. I mean, it is debatable. I mean, Rick Nash did have a heck of a career too. I mean, Duncan Keith won Stanley Cups, granted, but
Yeah.
Well,
I would take Nash over that.
Yeah, I think I would take Nash over Duncan Keith.
I mean, Alex Steen was drafted in the 20s by the Leafs, and he had a long career. I think he was captain of the Blues for a while. Really good player. So he would move up, but Alex Steen wasn't exactly like a superstar. That's why these exercises. I mean, you know what it is? It's a good excuse to write an article. Is it something that really needs to be written? Is it insightful?
No, but it's a fun thing.
Here's the one that gets me mad. If you want to know one that gets me mad, Franz Nielsen, number 87, originally, now number 7. Get the hell out of here. Just stop.
You guys get overworked about the silliest things. Like,
not me this time. It's Russ.
People want to write that. Like, what's the big deal about that? I just don't understand that. Like, I get, your point is a valid one. I mean, but like, who cares?
It is tough on teams, and it doesn't necessarily, like we often say, it's not like these players. What's unfair is we're evaluating this in like who's the best player, who are the best players for the draft. Let me finish for a second? And we're evaluating from who the best players are, when in actuality, teams don't often draft on the best player, even that way. They draft on what they need at the time too. And even if they were to sit back and say that was the best player, it doesn't necessarily mean that team was wrong, because that team was doing what they had to do at the time. So all of that is completely tough. And I apologize today I'm not trying to do the sex sells thing, but I am parked right. I decided I'm at the beach house still. And in order, my daughter, who's taking like a test for a summer course in our house, I had to leave the house. So I pulled around so I could have the beach entrance behind me. So there's people, you might see like some bikinis walking by me here as we go. So I apologize for that, because I'm literally like, I'm going to put down the window, show you where I am here. It's pretty funny. Take you outside for a second. So this is like literally where I am. So I am like, that is the beach, and that's the entrance to the beach right there.
Mm-hmm. Don't drop your computer, please.
Pretty crazy. So anyway, that's what's going on. So if you see people walking by, hey.
Yeah, Kev, the thing is, I'll be hearing this story with Russ, his aggravations about it, for the 3.5 hours we're driving up to Montreal. So I'm gonna get the full 2 barrels.
No, actually, I'll tell you that the Tigers would make that Doyle Alexander trade every time, because he was like 10-0 for them down the stretch.
It was, yeah, for sure. Well, but that doesn't mean that you can't talk about it. Like, even people in Detroit talk about it. I mean, it doesn't mean that, like, you would still make the trade, even though they didn't win the World Series. But everyone understands why they did it. Like, nobody lost any sleep over it. But I think it's fine to revisit that from time to time, just to remind people of kind of the events that had happened. I mean, now that trade is so old. And even it was 20 years ago, the draft thing. So it's fun to look back and say, oh yeah, they could have taken that guy. And
if I had $1 for every Tom Curvers for Scott Niedermeyer mention, or trading 2 first-round picks for Phil Kessel may turn out to be Dougie Hamilton and Tyler Seguin, I'd be a millionaire. So anyway, okay.
Sure. Well, let's actually get started here. All right, ready? Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. I'm very confident about that.
I'm Michael Agello, and I can't wait for July 4th next year. Not really.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology. That was the easiest date I kind of remember this whole year.
Well, it would have been better if we would had a Hockey Buzz yesterday. He could have gotten that right. Yeah. Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz. I know what day it is.
Watch the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday. And your buddy Steve is a great griller. Kevin, I'll tell you that yesterday he did all the grilling on the beach. Our buddy Steve, and at our 4th of July gala, and he did a hell of a job. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. I may have to jump today around 10:35, 10:40. I have a GM who can only talk to me today at that time, perhaps. So
then you missed it.
Then you're already late. Yeah.
No, 1:30. I'm sorry, 1:30. I said 10:30. I said 1:31. I'm sorry, 1:30. I don't know what. See, I got the date right, but I have no idea what time it is. Okay. I'm saying 1:30, 1:40, somewhere in there. If they call me, I'll jump off the boat, because that's the only time I can talk to them before the draft. So, but let's get into it. Let's get into what's going on here today. And I think we really should start for a second with this Alex DeBrincat stuff that's just flying around. There's other stuff that I definitely want to get into, as well as what I wrote about and what Kevin wrote about with Cap Space. But let's start with Alex DeBrincat. And
can I make a bold statement about Alex DeBrincat?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the rumors about the Philadelphia Flyers, if the Philadelphia Flyers trade the 5th overall pick for Alex DeBrincat, Chuck Fletcher should be fired immediately. It's just especially in the fact that DeBrincat is only under contract for, well, he's got one more year, then he's arbitration eligible, then he's a UFA in 2 years. If it's not followed up by a long-term extension with whoever he's traded to, if it's not followed up by a long-term extension, or unless with Philadelphia they're giving up somebody, and I told Russ this before, if they're trading a guy like Travis Konechny, who they clearly have soured on, and they clear salary, then that deal makes a little bit of sense. But I would not give up a top 5 pick, even though Alex DeBrincat is a really good scorer. This team is nowhere close to being a winner, and if they try to fast forward a winning type of situation, they're going to screw themselves up even more.
I agree with some of it, but I'm not agreeing with all of it. I think that, if you look at just player for player, are you hoping to get an Alex DeBrincat with the 5th overall pick? Yeah, I mean, I would take it, right? Like, I would take that if you're going to get a player as good as Alex DeBrincat with the 5th overall pick. Now, salary cap issues aside and all that stuff, of course, you can't keep them all aside, as Kevin wrote in his great article today about cap space being king. But the reality here is that, DeBrincat, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to throw that out to start with. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Flyers are going to make that trade. And
I don't think he's going to get traded, though.
I think he may get traded. The real hard thing about him trading him is the $9 million of actual cap that comes in his last year of his contract, which means his qualifying offer is $9 million. Right. That is the biggest issue of the whole thing. Really, when I talk to people about DeBrincat, it's like, and that's why Chicago's thinking about moving him, because $9 million qualifying offer for DeBrincat.
Yeah. And that's why the Flyers shouldn't do it at all costs. Right. But again, can I tell you definitively the Flyers are not going to trade the 5th overall pick in that deal? No, because I feel like what Chicago is doing is what my dad used to teach me when we were trolling as far as on the lake. And you kind of throw out your fishing line and you just let you go slow and you do that slow reel in. And I feel like this is what Chicago is doing with Philly, and we're going to hear even more about it when we get to Montreal. And so I don't think it's going to happen either, but I still give it a 25% chance of happening.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Philadelphia right now, and I'm not to be a Philly-centric buzzcast here, but Kev, you can smell the desperation of the Philadelphia Flyers 100 miles away. It's like, okay, they bring in Tortorella. Tortorella is not a rebuilding coach. Tortorella is a coach that wins now, but they have to fill 4 or 5 holes to be a win now team. And I don't think they can do that. So I don't agree that the direction they're going.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, but I think it's hard though, because DeBrincat has been a really special player.
Oh, he's a great player.
160 goals in 5 seasons, 25 years old. Like, I have no idea why. Contrast the Chicago Blackhawks, who are afraid of this qualifying offer, to the Vancouver Canucks, who faced a similar situation with Besser. Besser is now sitting there with a 3-year contract for far less than his qualifying offer. And, everybody's happy in Vancouver. And now the Blackhawks are in a panic over DeBrincat. And just, why would you want to trade a guy that's had 2 40-goal seasons, by age 25? I don't understand this at all. And I think this is a big mistake, unless, we're always not privy to what's going on behind. If he has told them unequivocally, I am not staying in Chicago, I don't want to be here for whatever reason, well, then that's a different story. Then they're forced to trade him, and that's it. But if they're afraid of the money, I say they ride it out and see what happens, because you got 2 more years with him, and you're committed, because of Seth Jones and other reasons. You're committed to try to win. So
and that's the thing, Kev. I think they're staring into the abyss of a full rebuild, because you've got Kane and Taves with 1 year left. You've locked up Seth Jones for a long term. DeBrincat's 2 years away from being a full UFA. So if he secretly went to Kyle Davidson and did a Pierre-Luc Dubois and said, I'm not going to sign in 2 years, then it's understandable.
Right.
But I think right now they're looking to get into the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. And if they,
I do not think so. No,
no,
I don't see them, at least not now. You've already had Patrick Kane say publicly that he wants to stay. There's a commitment there that they would like to re-sign him.
Mm-hmm.
And, so, I mean, it could happen because your points are valid. Like they don't have enough there. But what if next year Kubelik has a bounce back year? Like I don't disagree with what you're saying about their talent level. They may just fall apart, but I'm not sure that's how they see it. That's why it doesn't make any sense to me that they're afraid about DeBrincat getting to, that point when he's just been such an exceptional, player. It's like it feels like it's happening again to DeBrincat. He didn't get any respect when he was, in the draft, and now he's been remarkable.
Yeah.
2 40-goal seasons, 160 goals in 5 years, and now they're saying, "Well, I don't know. Can we afford him?"
I remember freaking out at that draft. I was talking to you, Russ, at the time too about the fact that DeBrincat was still, and I still remember our text back and forth, like, "What the heck is going on? Like, why?" And it was completely crazy.
We were sitting, Russ and I won't see the person we talked to. Russ and I were sitting at the draft talking to another reporter who said, I've seen Alex DeBrincat, and I don't think, he basically was saying I don't think he's an NHLer because he was too small, and I'm like, Russ and I saw him play at Erie. He was a complete sniper. I'm like, what are these teams thinking about? And Russ was saying the same thing. What are these teams thinking about? Let him slip out of the first round. And then he fell into Chicago's lap. I think it was at 35 or 36. And I'm like, geez, the rich get richer.
But that was when Chicago was really good already.
Yeah, at that point that they were. And they were just coming off. They had won the Cup the year before. But the whole point here is that you have to look, Kyle Davidson has to be looking at this situation 2 to 3 years down the road. And more than likely 2 or 3 years down the road, Jonathan Taves is no longer on the Blackhawks. Maybe Patrick Kane is, like Kevin said. You would think that they'd want to lock up DeBrincat long-term, but if they're planning a full rebuild, and remember, this is an organization that does not have an NHL goalie signed right now. Nobody. So right. It's up in the air what the direction of this team is right now.
Yeah, I mean, they may be trading Dylan Strome too. So it's like I really don't know what direction they're in.
Do you think they are trading Dylan Strome?
I mean, I've heard murmurs. I don't know for sure that they are, but I've heard it.
I've heard it too, and I don't understand that too, because it sounded like they were going to trade him at the start of last year, and then he had a good season. Patrick Kane, some things that led
going on right now, guys. So sorry about it. And they're saying in the chat room too, there is an Islanders deal apparently on the books right now that could happen.
I'll look it up. But
I heard this morning that Varlamov could be moved today. I think that could be about to go down. I think DeBrincat is on the Islanders' radar. And when I was talking to somebody this morning about this, we're going to open the rumor tracker. It's one of the rumors that are in the rumor tracker right now, but it's not out there yet. But as soon as the rumor tracker goes live, it'll be out there. That I think that's where they're looking at. The person in the chat is saying Josh Bailey and
well, these are names that are being talked about, but I don't think
I heard Varlamov was a good chance to go today. I was going to bring that up.
That's not anywhere close to being enough for DeBrincat. I mean,
no. I'm not saying it is, but I think this is all. It's all it's Lou doing things towards DeBrincat, and I'm not saying that would be.
Do you think Varlamov would go to Chicago?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't either.
Now he's got a limited no trade, so maybe that's a place that he didn't put on his list.
I don't know why.
Why that could be. That could be. Yeah.
They're not a great team, but at the same time, it's a great place to play. Like it's not a place that people don't want to go. So I don't think that.
No, not at all. But
I mean, I think the Varlamov could do worse. I mean, it's a team that doesn't have a goalie. That's in a good market. To me, that's about all you can ask for if you're Varlamov.
And I don't think they have any Russians, so we'll go there too.
But if you're a goalie right now, all you can really ask for is if you're going to a place that needs a goalie first, number one, and then you go to a team that's a good market. I think that's number two, right? I mean, what else?
This would be the first domino in the goaltending if Varlamov gets traded. I mean, everybody is saying, and I've been listening to a whole bunch of stuff over the weekend in terms of what may happen. Nobody seems to know where the hell any of the goalies are going. Kemper probably stays in Colorado, but if he asks for too much, then Colorado will look elsewhere. Fleury might go back to Minnesota, but might go to Pittsburgh. But he also is open to going to Toronto. It's like or if Kemper goes someplace else, then he would go to Colorado. I mean, it's all domino effect, and one move could sort of trip everything else and getting into motion. So I'm wondering, like when that's going to happen and how that's going to happen.
Yeah, the Athletic has been pounding on Matt Murray going to Chicago. At least Lazarus did. I mean, pounding's too strong, but just suggested that seemed like a real possibility.
Well, I mean, right now, Ottawa is clearly trying to move Matt Murray's contract. The problem is that teams that were actually interested in him as a playing goaltender can't afford the $6.25 million cap hit. Now, Chicago can. They have plenty of cap space. Russ has brought up the question mark when it comes to Matt Murray. Can he play? Can he play consistently? And
that's fair.
And nobody knows that. Nobody knows.
That.
I mean, Ottawa. We'll talk about the buyout in a bit, but I mean, Ottawa already bought out Colin White today, and now if they decided to buy out Matt Murray, they would save $5 million over the next 2 years. But they're taking a $10 million cap hit. It's a 2/3 buyout. So if they can trade him without having to pay that, then that would be a direction they'd like to go.
Yeah, I mean, another name that's out there that is moving that I heard the Islanders connected to too, and some of my brothers in the chat room just now as well. But it's true is Puyarvi, who is no, I don't know, like you said, Varley's already turned down Edmonton once.
Yeah.
So I don't know that's it necessarily. Puyarvi I heard connected with the Flyers as well.
This would surprise me because this is a team that has gotten weird play, not great play out of Anthony Beauvillier, who's more talented than Puljujarvi, and I don't, and I know he's on the block. I don't see Lou having much patience for Jesse Puljujarvi. I just don't.
Well, I mean, if you take his nationality into account,
I guess
he'd probably go to the Carolina Hurricanes because they collect Finns like crazy.
And he's played with some of them.
And he's played with some of them too. Yeah. But
for sure. Yeah.
With regard to DeBrincat, I wanted to bring this up too because we were discussing whether or not at some point, although I don't think it's right this second, but as Mike pointed out accurately, it wouldn't take much for them to topple over and go right into full rebuild mode. A general manager reminded me, and I'm probably guilty of this. We think of terms of, because we saw it happen in Vancouver and it's happening in San Jose, where they have contracts that are very heavy, that makes it difficult to go into full rebuild. And he said to me that you can go into full rebuild. In fact, it's almost helpful if you have one guy that's a heavy contract, because eventually you end up down at the bottom of the cap floor and that one guy helps you stick above it. So in other words, if Chicago wanted to commit to that and they were willing to trade Patrick Kane, having Seth Jones would not be prohibitive. If they got rid of everyone else, he would just be the guy, and ultimately he would probably open up his no trade clause simply because he just doesn't want to be part of all that.
And having a $6.25 million goaltender who might be hurt or might not be hurt because he'd go on IR instead of LTIR and still count against the cap, that wouldn't hurt them either. So the situation with San Jose and the news broke earlier this morning. Mike Greer, former Sabre, former Washington Capital, played a number of places. He's the new general manager, first black general manager in NHL history, which is a fantastic thing. The rumor is, Russ, that David Quinn might be the head coach, his choice in San Jose. But he's got, I mean, God bless him. He's got a real challenge. I mean, when you've got Vlasic, Burns, and Erik Karlsson making that's a worse situation in Toronto. At least the four forwards making $40 million are productive. All these guys, Vlasic, Burns, and Karlsson, are over the age of 32, and they're all they're all declining. I mean,
but he's also got William Eklund coming and Timo Meier is a star, and so he has that too.
Plus, I'm hearing Brent Burns is going to get moved. That there's enough interest in him, so they'll be down one of them.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad landing spot for Quinn. I actually think that's good.
Where could Brent Burns go, Kevin? That's a really interesting one.
Well, I've heard the Islanders. I've I'm trying to think who else that's passed along, but nothing's coming to mind. But
yeah, I was just curious. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. But we'll look around about it. But that's a really interesting name, definitely. And that's a huge thing. If San Jose can do that, that is a huge deal.
How many years is left in this?
I'll float another one. I'll float the Flyers because certainly Chuck Fletcher knows them, and if they know that Ryan Ellis is out, they'll take on some salary. So
that's why you can get moved. We're down to 3 years on Burns now.
Right.
Yeah, 3 years at $8 million.
So I could see him going to Philly.
I could see that too. No, I mean, the Flyers. There's no question that the Flyers are looking to do something newsworthy. You know, like this is a for them more than any year I can remember covering this. But going back, actually, the last time I can remember this kind of thing was the year they went out and they got Briere. When they went and they got Briere, they were that going into that year, they were also looking to do something major newsworthy. You know,
I ultimately question an organization that is looking to make the big splash when maybe the big splash is not the good move. It's better.
That's where you differ from where they are, Mike. I mean, the reality is that, you know, you've said this you said it twice today already, that you think that they're nowhere close or anything that you can think that, or I can think that, or anyone can think that.
Well, I'm going to tell you something funny about history repeating itself. So Brent Burns at the NHL draft in Minnesota, day 2, was set up for an autograph session. He got traded the night before, and he still showed up for the fans of Minnesota to sign the autographs that next day, which is an amazing thing because a lot of players probably wouldn't.
Yeah, no, that shows he's for the fans and not for his team. You know.
Now,
I do want to finish the Flyers thought for a second, because the one thing I wanted to say is, last time when you brought that up, Mike, is that the reality is that we can debate till the cows come up where they really are, you know, and there you can see how their perspective is when you go through their lineup and you look at the players they have in their top 6. If everybody's healthy, they're not looking at themselves like a team in like the straits of like an Arizona or a Seattle. They see themselves as a team that has like. But you often are talking to putting them in that perspective. They're not really at that. I'm not saying they're a cup contender, but they're also not dismal. And the reality is,
I'm not saying that they're that bad at. What I'm saying is, and granted, it's my perspective. Obviously, it's not their perspective. If they go out and make the moves that I think that they're going to make, and they don't work, then Chuck Fletcher will be fired. Because you know, then it will be a miscalculation. No, the thing is, if he's getting marching orders from higher above that you've got to make this team a contender, then he really has no choice. But some of the moves, I mean, if they go out and trade for Brent Burns, yes, it's 3 years at $8 million. If they get San Jose to shave a couple million off that, then it's a workable contract. Then it makes sense. They're looking for a right hand shot.
Also, because it's very, very unlikely that Ryan Ellis will be there for the start of the regular season, and you know, and maybe even for the entire season. So
more like
I think,
go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just going to say, the way you have to look at the Flyers is they weren't very good last year, and they don't have Giroux, and Farabee's not going to start the season, and Ellis is not going to start the season.
Right.
And, you know, that's not a good look for them. I mean, their improvement right now rests on John Tortorella.
Yeah.
You know, so
John Tortorella and some of the younger players getting a little bit better too. I mean, they do have some younger players who are like Cam York, and these guys can continually, you know, continue to improve. They have added some guys in there that they see is getting possibly younger, and they like, and then with all the injuries, I mean, they did last year without Couturier at all. If Couturier plays, that's a huge. I mean, he's going to be likely to be their captain this year. So the reality is they have a lot of there's so many players that didn't play last year. They're just a hard team to. We kind of all overrated them last year, I think, going into the season. I know I did. I know you did too. But I think there's a real possibility that we're underrating them going into this season. Like, I think that there is more there than we think. I'm not saying they're a contender, but I think they are a playoff bubble team, and I think that's not necessarily where they want to be. But
this year they're a playoff bubble team.
Yeah, I do.
No way.
I absolutely do.
They don't have enough goals. You know.
Yeah, I mean Carter Hart would have to take a Shesterkin like jump.
There is no Giroux, but there will be something that replaces Giroux. Okay, there will be something like, whether it's, you know, a Gaudreau or whatever they are going to replace Giroux with. It's going to be there.
Or Kadri. Well,
it's going to be there.
speaking of Giroux, I wanted to ask you about this because over the weekend, and I know we've talked about him, maybe wanting to stay with Florida, but over the weekend, people who know what they're talking about, guys like Pierre LeBrun and Elliot Friedman are reporting, well, Edmonton's in on Giroux. Well, Toronto is interested in Giroux. Okay, I'd like to know, how either one of those teams can afford Giroux. I mean, maybe if Andrew Kane goes someplace else, or if the Leafs trade Muzzin or Nylander, they can afford Giroux. But, unless it's a 1-year deal at a discounted rate, I don't see how Giroux goes to those places. So I'm just wondering, what the plan B of Giroux is if Florida can't afford to re-sign him.
I think there's a little bit of agent stuff going on out there with Giroux right now to try to get the price up in Florida. Making it like he's not like, if there aren't that many places for Giroux to go, Florida can keep him at a lesser rate than he wants, or I think at the end of the day, there aren't that many places for Giroux to go. And I think he does like it in Florida, but I do think that this is more of his agent kind of getting stuff out there, especially when you hear teams like Toronto and Edmonton thrown into the mix.
Yeah.
I immediately think, okay, that's just that could be getting people talking, I don't know. It's not like they're saying, Carolina's interested in him. It's not like that's just not what you're hearing. So,
and Kev, we know it's that time of the year where you hear things floated out there, and we've all been exposed to them like a week before free agency when somebody comes out and says Nazem Kadri could get $10 million on a 7-year deal. Okay, I've got stock in the Brooklyn Bridge and I'm willing to sell it to you. I mean, come on. Don't get me wrong. Kadri's going to hit it big in free agency, but you're talking about paying him like what Jack Eichel is making. Give me a break.
Yeah, no, and teams are really resistant of that $10 million mark. So, I don't see that happening, but, teams like them, and there are some unlikely. This is what I've been told. Some unlikely teams that are really pursuing him as well, and that could drive things up. So I don't see it happening, but I don't know.
What he has going for him more than you would think is the amount of people who love players that can score that also have an edge to them. There are not that many players who can score in this league that have an edge to them, and that's something that that I really think that it's working to his advantage.
For the first time today, Kev, because we've heard Boston, we've heard him maybe going back to Colorado, which I think is unlikely. We've heard Washington because of the Backstrom thing. We've heard Philadelphia today. For the first time, I heard Detroit mentioned as a possible for Kadri, and I'm like, well, they got tons of cap space. Of course, it made that.
Yeah, and they are one of the teams. That I'm aware of that have expressed some interest in him.
I've got a good one I want to talk about here.
And he's from London, Ontario, so that would be like playing close to home. So that's
and with the Red Wings, great desire is for a second line center with some real bite. They would prefer to have a bigger guy, but that he would solve a lot of problems for them. And, when you're captain, it says multiple times during the season that we don't do as well against a bigger, stronger opponents. I think that the message is received. So.
The question is, how does that affect Larkin? Because Larkin's entering the final year of his deal, and if all of a sudden they go out and sign Kadri for, say, $8 million or $8.5 million a year, then Larkin's going to say, well, I'm the number one center, so I should be making more than Kadri.
Well, I don't think they feel they're going to have a problem re-signing. Like, he's already over $6 million. I keep telling people in Detroit, it's not a big leap from 6.5 to $9 million. I'm sure they don't want to give Larkin $9 million, but we'll see what happens. But people are saying, well, that money is going to be eaten away when they pay Larkin and Bertuzzi, and it won't. You're going to increase Larkin by $2.5 million. You're going to increase Bertuzzi by maybe $4 million. So that's $6.5 million. You still got $30 million left. So they can afford to re-sign those two. Although I think there's still a fear in Detroit, including within the organization in Detroit, that Bertuzzi's negotiations won't go smoothly. And if that's the case, I would not be shocked if they move.
that would be. I mean, that would be surprising. No, the big thing I want to get into before I may have to jump off here to talk to your GM is what I wrote about today, which is that the Penguins are really actively, and this is for you, Russ, they're actively pursuing getting to number 4 in the draft to get to trade with Seattle to get to draft Logan Cooley, and that they really
he's there,
this is a player that they really. I mean, obviously, a Pittsburgh kid already has a relationship with Crosby, and basically, I've been told that Hextall, this is a person who's tight with Hextall, that this is something that he's doing, and he's working hard on this and trying to make this happen. I guess, Russ, do you think Logan Cooley makes it to 4?
I mean, there is a possibility, and I did put a mock together that does. It really depends on Arizona, because it's up to Arizona. Now, should Arizona let Logan Cooley slip? No, they shouldn't. But will they? They might. They might take Simon Nemec, and if they do, then Logan Cooley would be there at 4. But then now, why is Seattle going to let the Penguins wrestle him away when they could have Beniers and Cooley up the middle for the next 10 years? Like, who is the Pittsburgh Penguins going to give them to make them want to do that? Because their pick is like 21.
Well, yeah, and it depends on a lot of things, but I do think there is also the feeling in Seattle that they could get a good pick, they could get a good player at 21, and they could get a couple really good things from Pittsburgh, and they need a couple really good things. Like they don't just.
I don't know what Pittsburgh has to offer.
Yeah, I don't see a mix there at all, Russ. Do you?
Yeah.
Like, what could they possibly give them?
Their top prospects are not that great.
Samuel Poulin is their top prospect.
He's not great. He's
how about a number 1 next year?
No.
I think Burke has learned his lesson from that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that it might be a plausible. It might be a plausible backup scenario if Malkin goes someplace else, but they really, that organization has been so ripped apart in terms of prospect. I mean, they could trade him Kasperi Kapanen, and you need 2 more players.
Yeah, but again, I don't see him. He is not.
Yeah, he's not going to do it. I don't see Seattle giving up a chance to pick 4th in the draft,
right?
Or 2 picks, even 2 first-round picks that are going to, be in the
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's no logical connection there. They don't have any type
of from Pittsburgh. I get it, but beyond that, I don't see it.
But I don't know. I mean, all I know is that.
If you can give me somebody that would attract
I wish I knew, Kevin, but I don't know the player. But all I know is that it hasn't been shut down, and that there are people that
even if you gave him Jake Gensel, which they wouldn't. I still question whether they would do the pick, because you still got to pay Jake Gensel, and it's not like Seattle's even close to being a contending team.
Right, and Seattle purportedly is out there in terms of they're going to be after big time free agents. They're going to go after. They want to add offense. They're going to go after Klingberg. They might be in on Kadri. They might be in on Giroux. Like they want to add offense, because the main problem with them last year was they were not able to score, and they want that team to be a little more exciting. But they don't have to trade the number 4 pick to do that. I mean, okay, if you want to trade the number 4 pick for Alex DeBrincat, okay. That's similar to the rumors about Philadelphia. I don't think Seattle's far enough along to do something like that. So I think Ron Francis is going to take a slower, methodical approach. And
he has that choice, though, from what I've heard.
But Russ is right. The 1-2 combination of their 2 centers. There's nothing they can get from Pittsburgh that I see that would make that at least reasonable. Like if you're going to say Crosby and but that isn't going to happen. I mean, Pittsburgh is fully committed to both publicly and in their actions to keep going, trying to keep winning cups. So it just doesn't make any sense.
But the interesting thing about Pittsburgh right now, Kev, is the fact that it sounds like they're making progress on Letang. It sounds like
surprising,
right, but they're not making progress on Malkin. I mean, I don't know if it's term or amount, or if this is just a staring contest, and at the 11th hour he'll say, "Sure, I'll take what you want." But I mean, right now, like if they really don't have a viable second center option, if Malkin goes anyplace else, they'd have to go in free agency. It could be a Trocheck, it could be Kadri or whatever. But I mean, that leaves them a little shorthanded, and I don't think they're it's been over a decade that they have had that problem of not having.
Casey DeSmith has signed, so maybe they'll trade Casey DeSmith. 2-year deal, 1.8.
I wish I knew. I mean, I think Gensel would be an interesting thing for Seattle to look at if that was possible. I mean,
that's.
Yeah, well, that signing, Russ, that signing tells you one thing: Marc-Andre Fleury is not going.
He's not coming there.
No.
So scratch Pittsburgh off the list. So now it's either Colorado, Toronto, back to Minnesota. It's like that.
Minnesota is a pretty good bet there.
I think so.
The bad thing about the draft act. This is the bad part about making some trades at the draft. So let's say you trade Gensel. In that deal, and there's other things in that deal, first, whatever. Yeah. There's a guy 21st, Isaac Howard, who could beat Jake Gensel, and Pittsburgh could get him at 21, right. And then why would Seattle will look at themselves in 10 years and say, boy, that didn't work out well.
But maybe there's also
I think Howard's going to hire 21.
He could. I'm just saying as an example.
Yeah. And maybe there's also a really good number 2 center at 21 who they could be adding.
Not for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, not in this draft, I don't think. I mean, not a really, I don't know.
A developmental guy who could be a number 2
center.
I mean,
Cooley's going to be a one and done in college and then turn pro, and he could be in the NHL in 2 years. He could be, he's Zegras 2.0. Yeah.
There's a reason why Matthew Nyes of the Leafs didn't go to the NHL last year. At the end of last year, it's because Cooley was committed to Minnesota and he wanted to play with them at winning a national championship. So that's probably going to raise his stock because he'll probably play with Cooley. So
the other element of this that makes no sense is I think Arizona's going to take Cooley.
Yes.
I don't know. I hear other things. You see Craig Morgan saying about Nemec. Arizona's a wild card, Kev. I don't think it's a done.
Well, deal. I don't think it's slam dunk either because I agree they are a wild card, but I just think
they should take him. You're right.
Yeah. I just don't see it.
I also hear that, and the last thing I'm going to say, because I'm going to have to jump off, I think, any minute, is the Jacob Chychrun stuff is going to start really picking up in the next day here.
Right, and that's another reason why they might take Nemec is because he's a couple years away from the NHL and they're going to lose Chychrun.
Yeah, and by the time he's ready for the NHL, they'll be in Houston. So there you go.
But they've got to have a center, and they took last year. They've got a forward winger, right? That they'll need to play with somebody. So
there's another guy that the Flyers could jump in on is Chychrun. I was told. Who his father actually obviously played here.
Yeah, his father played there.
He lived here. He grew up here a little bit.
Well,
they would have to give up so much on that deal.
Yeah, I talked to a GM who it was or is, depending on whether I believe it or not, on the thing, and he said they have not changed one iota on what their ask is.
Yeah,
so four first round equivalents. Where does that fit for that? And where do the Flyers have those kind of assets?
They do have prospects, and they can do that, and they can call Konechny a first rounder and all that.
I was just saying, Konechny was a first rounder. Morgan Frost was a first rounder.
Yeah, they're not taking those guys.
I know.
So
they anyway, I do have to go, guys, but I'm gonna make this good. But Kevin and I will be back tomorrow with the podcast. You guys will be traveling tomorrow.
We'll carry on for a few more minutes.
Yeah, so Kevin and I will be doing all this tomorrow, and we'll talk more. You guys can continue on, and we'll talk soon, guys. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. I mentioned it earlier regarding the buy. Now the buyout window started on July 1st. We hadn't had any buyouts, which was a little surprising. I thought they were going to sort of happen right at the very beginning, but we had our first major one this morning, Kev, with Colin White, who now he's under the age of 26, so he's a 1/3 buyout, and that's the main reason why Ottawa did this. I think they did it because they're going to sign Josh Norris to a long-term extension. So instead of paying Colin White 3 years at almost $5 million, they buy him out. Now they only have a cap hit of less than $1 million for 5 of the 6 years, and now they put that money towards Josh Norris. Thing is, Colin White, I think, still can play So really, they gave up on a guy who's young and just for completely monetary reasons.
Yeah, although I think even Russ will admit that he's been slow to develop, not the player that they thought he was going to be.
Yeah, injuries I think have slowed him.
Injuries for sure have played a role in all that. Although I brought him up to another general manager, and they basically said, he could still, be a player, but we just don't see him having the value that we all thought he had.
Right. I think you have to find the right team. I think Boston might, because Boston could have drafted him.
I mean, he's going to get a job. I'm not even
Montreal, I've heard is a possibility.
Yeah, Montreal could, because they have time to see what,
I mean, Detroit, if you're looking to go somewhere where, you're going to get a chance, why not sign with Detroit?
Well, Russ, the Kent Hughes was his agent, so that's why Montreal.
Yeah, there you go.
Connected to him. So, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be like a lot of these buyout guys, Kev, is the fact that they'll be willing to take a 1-year deal to prove it, to get, to say, okay, I'm better than this. I'll show it. So he could sign a year. He's from the Boston area. He could sign a 1-year deal with the Bruins, light it up, and then go out free agency and make it big again.
I guess there's two ways to look at this. This would be interesting for Russ to give me his perspective on this, but because I've had this discussion through the years with people. When you're in that position, are you better off to go to a team that has good players, but it's going to be harder for you to get playing time, or to go to a weaker team where the opportunity is greater,
right?
But you won't be surrounded by a lot of talent. You have to do a lot of it on your own. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, Russ.
I'll tell you how I feel, because I've seen it work I think you have to go where the opportunity is, because that's where you're going to get the ice time. You might get power play time. That's how you get your point totals up. White certainly has offensive talent, and that could be the way where all of a sudden he gets into that, 35, 40-point range that he should be at every year. So I think the opportunity is more important for him.
Well, and that's the case, then it should be Montreal, Detroit, or Arizona, something like that. Not Boston.
Although if they don't re-sign Krejci, or they strike out on Kadri, he might have a chance of playing, and maybe not top 6, but top 9.
Yeah, the problem is he can't afford to wait. If they're waiting on Krejci and this stretches out into the summer, well, the Montreals, the Arizonas, and Detroits, they're going to be out there filling their rosters. So.
Yeah, right. Now, the big news of the weekend was the trade of Ryan McDonagh. Now, we heard the rumors of him being shopped and him having some control of where he was going. He ends up going to Nashville for Philippe Myers and Grant Mismatch. I always butcher it's
Mishmash, yeah.
Mishmash, yes. But I'm sure he's taken some ribbing on that. Yeah. But Kev, I look at this deal and I'm like, wow, Tampa was in a no-win situation. I mean, if it was just purely let's get value for Ryan McDonagh, a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, maybe a borderline Hall of Famer, they couldn't, because they had desperately to so much desperation of moving that contract to be able to sign other people that really they took an okay return.
Well, not even okay. As I did, I went and I used the Team 33 algorithm, which I've used before, where they assign ratings and score values to things, and it's not even close. He is he's still at a 570 level player, and they're getting back a 5th, 6th, 7th defenseman and a guy that may not make the NHL, may not.
Right.
But there's two things about this that I find interesting. First of all, we should have taken the hint when Julien Brisebois said, "I'm going to try to re-sign all 3 of my UFAs."
Right.
He was already over the cap. He did have a coupon. Because he has the guy on the long-term IR, Seabrook. But he still didn't have enough to do that. But the other thing about this that I find amazing is none of us were predicting that Ryan McDonagh would be the sacrificial.
No.
Killorn. There were other players that I thought, well, they would try to do that, but apparently they didn't want a nickel and dime it, and maybe they're fearful at 33 that.
Well, he has slowed down a little bit. We saw that in the playoffs, but the thing is, I know a lot of people are trying to tell me, well, look, Sergachev is the replacement, and I'm like, listen, there are so many things Ryan McDonough does on the ice in a hockey IQ situation, a high hockey IQ situation, that Sergachev can't do that on the fly in a moment. And I've seen McDonough just completely do that in huge games. They're going to miss that no matter what. No matter the caps are all going to add up, but they're going to miss that.
Well, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
It was more. Apparently, Kev, it was more the fact that he's making this for another 4 years. He's making $6,875 for four more years. So they needed to clear out that space, not just for next year to fit everything in. With Killorn, he only had 1 year left. That they want to re-sign, not only re-sign their UFAs, they're talking about, we want to re-sign Cirelli because he's an RFA. We want to re-sign Colton and Sergachev and Cernak. We want to extend them. They want to do all that. Okay, they can't. Well, I don't know where. Maybe Killorn after this year, his contract is gone. So that between Killorn's contract and McDonough's contract, that's $10 million. That helps you get at least part of the way. But I admit to Russ's point, I don't know if their defenses are going to be anywhere close to being the same without McDonough, because he was just sort of the glue that made that second pairing so good that it was tough to match up against.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, his strength is penalty killing, shot blocking, leadership. All the hard things to do for defensemen he does. I'm sure that there was a lot of discussion about whether to do that. I've talked to some folks that still believe that McDonough will be an effective player at the.
I don't know, he'll be good for a couple of years. It's just
even beyond that, I think people believe that the way he plays, he can still be effective. But you're not going to be the same at 36 as you were at 33. But more importantly, they just simply needed the $6.8 million.
Right.
So,
and the flip side of this, Kev, was that we heard St. Louis as a possibility. I speculated about Detroit because Detroit was looking for that veteran defenseman. Nobody said Nashville. There was some talk about Columbus. And I guess Jarmo Kekalainen came out and said that all those reports were completely inaccurate. But the first thing I said when I heard it was Nashville, it's like, okay, I know they have plenty of cap space, but they're bitching and moaning about paying Philip Forsberg, and now they've added $7 million on defense. I mean, is this take him out of Forsberg, or are they still in on him?
No, they're still in on him for sure. I don't know whether they'll get it done, but they're still trying to get it done. And they still, they had over $20 million.
Right.
So, but for the priority, Poyle has forever been, defense is king, going back to his days in Washington. And they have said publicly that they didn't say that they didn't have faith in Fabro or who was the other young defenseman,
Alexander Carrier,
that they didn't have faith in him, but they like him less than the league likes him. They see their warts on an everyday basis, and neither of those guys is very big. No. And they wanted guys that were hard to play against. So Poyle has said publicly, I want a second pairing defenseman, and he couldn't get a better one than McDonough.
Okay, Russ, just before we end the show here, because, there will be a number of narratives that we'll be dealing with in Montreal in terms of, whether a player slips, whether this guy is too big and not fast enough or too slow. What is like the two or three sort of players that you think sort of has to bust out of the narrative that's being set for them?
Well, I think Matthew Savoie is one, because I'm seeing some reports out there that just simply aren't true. I think he'll fall a little bit. I still think he'll be in the top 10. I still think he can play center at the NHL level. It's not a guarantee mortal lock because he's 5'9", but I think he can do it. And there's just people that are dead set against that. So I think Matthew Savoie is one of them.
I'll give you one, because I brought it up yesterday when we were talking to Shane, is the player that says they can play center, but does anybody believe that they can play center? Slavkovsky at the Combine said, oh, yeah, I can play center.
Yeah, I don't believe Slavkovsky. And I think, for Gauthier, it's, 60-40, he can't. But I've seen him do it. I've watched him in a game do it. But again, that doesn't mean he's going to do it all the time. And he's not going to be on a team of all-stars. So we're going to have to see him really do it for a couple of years at Boston College before we really know if he could do it. Now, he's a terrific player anyhow. But I'm seeing people getting carried away with what they're saying about him. He's as good as Austin Matthews. It's like, I get it. He's a talent. I've watched him. He's really good. Let's not overinflate this. Now, somebody else today wrote he's Jeff Carter. Let's not overinflate this. Let's just look at the guy and say, yeah, he's a good player, but he's definitely getting, inflated ever since. And he started with me. He started with me 2 months ago telling me that he really thought he could play center full time. He's been pushing that. He pushed it at the combine. And trust me, agents tell their players to throw that in there, even if they know there's a chance they can't do it.
And with him, Kev, he's going to Boston College. He says he's going to play center at Boston College. So at least teams will get a good look at him playing up the middle in the NCAA and be able to determine over like the next 1 or 2 years, however long he's playing there, whether he can. But if he can't, then he'll still be a good winger. But it definitely raises his stock to say he can play center and be effective.
Yeah, unless every year we go through this, there's always one guy in particular that everybody's curious about, or you hear, oh yeah, he played center before, and they moved him and all that kind of stuff.
And even Frank Nazar, I just re-listened to his interview when I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I like center. I like center better than wing, but I've only been playing it for a year and a half.
Yeah, so I mean, and these guys are only anyway 17 or 18.
Right.
So it's not like, 4 years ago was a long time ago. They were 14 years old.
So you have to put these things. It's great. That's great perspective, Kev. You have to put these things in perspective, and I do try and do that. There's another thing in this draft. There's like a high school kid, Sam Rinzel. He's ratcheting up the charts. He's a defenseman. It's interesting because I have now learned that you've got to be 2.5 points a game as a high school player to really get me to think you could play in the NHL. Because even with Middlestat, look how much he's struggling, and boy, was he a star in high school and beyond that. And it still was hard to translate. So now he's got size and he's got some offensive game. I have the Sabres taking him 28th. The other thing is you take a Sam Rinzel, you don't have to pay him for a long time because he is a long-term guy based on the fact that you're drafting someone out of high school.
Yeah, and they seem okay. First of all, they have a lot of U.S. NDDB guys in their organization, or former U.S. guys. Plus, they've been drafting a lot. They drafted Middlestat out of there. They drafted Johnson, the defenseman. A lot of Minnesota guys. So yeah, they could with. But I've heard a lot of talk, Russ, about them pooling together their 2 lower picks to try to move up because they have 3 first-round picks. I don't know.
They're going to try and do that, but also Montreal's trying to do that, and I think Montreal's going to be more successful than doing it.
Well, they have 5 second-round picks. That's why I think it's 4 or 5. Yeah, they can pair a couple of those second-round picks and move up. So
and I think they'll be more successful in doing that. Another player that I'd like to see go higher than even what I have him is Connor Geeky. I know his skating needs to work on, but he's a hell of a center. He does everything right. He's 6'4", but he does need to work on his skating. Like right now, he gets where he needs to go, where he's at, and it's going to get tougher as he gets as the talent compresses. But at the end of the day, this kid could really play, and it's amazing how he's just barely even getting talked about, other than the league pushing him in league interviews because they must know that teams have interest in him. And certainly, I have him at 17. I hope he goes higher, but he was originally a top 10 pick, but now everybody's picked the skating apart to make you wonder, is he even that anymore?
Oh, yeah. He's going to go earlier than that. I mean, most of the big time mock drafts, he's much higher than that.
Yeah, between 11 and 15, so top 15. Yeah.
I hope that's the case.
Is there anything that might happen or might not happen over the next couple of days that you're going to be sort of queuing in on? Kev?
Oh, I thought that was for us. I'm sorry. No, I mean, I expect there will be trades just because I think they're going to be connected to the draft. There are a lot of teams, more teams than usual, are willing to move their draft picks. And And normally we don't see that. So we're going to have to, I think there will be some deals where involving, the name players that involve some picks. Now, we tend to say that every year, but this time we're serious about it. I think that's going to so.
And I do think from the Leaf perspective, I do think that they're going to, unlike last year when they didn't want to trade Zach Hyman's rights to Edmonton for a draft pick because they didn't think it was worth enough to get back. They only have 3 picks, so I think that they're going to trade. They may trade the rights to Mikheyev, who reportedly can get offers over $4.5 million a year, which I God bless him if he gets that. I don't think he's worth that much, but that's the market determines that. And Jack Campbell, the talk has been for easily 2 months that they have not exchanged numbers. So that just tells me the Leafs are not interested in what the last offer was. I don't think he's going back to Toronto. I think he's probably going to sign in Edmonton or New Jersey. At least that's what Elliot Friedman and LeBrun and CJ are reporting. So I mean, there are going to be a lot. It's the story that I'm going to track is who the Toronto goaltender is, because if it's not Campbell, is it Fleury? Is it Kemper? Do they sign Husso? Do they trade for somebody? I mean, there's so many directions, and there's not a ton of options. But
that's a scary situation for Toronto.
Yeah. But they seem very determined, Kev. They determined that Campbell at what he's asking for is not the direction they want to go. It's like if it was cheaper, maybe they would go because it would be cost effective, but he's in their mind, it just sounds he's not a $5 million goaltender. And if that's the case, then okay. But now they have to have a plan B in case that if they've determined that they're not going to go with Campbell, they have to have a plan B. And I don't know what the hell it is, but we'll see.
And I'll give you one sleeper because everybody wants to know. I gave out one on Off the Post. I'll give out another one here, an overager, Ben Stryden. He's going to go to North Dakota, play in the USHL. I like once in a while the overagers.
Okay. And Kevin will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Eklund, for Russ Cohen, for Kevin Allen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.